Hey everyone, welcome to day 40. And today we'll be wrapping up the Netflix clone. Just a few things are remaining, and we will deploy our clone on Netlify, and then we learn about unit testing using jest and React testing library. And I'm happy to see you guys as well. All right, so there were a couple of issues related to the login flow, right? So, if you guys remember, whenever we were trying to log in, right, it would not take us to the profile page the moment we would log in. So, let's work on those changes. Just give me a sec. All right. So, let's make some small changes. Let's go to the login screen. And here, what we will do is what we want to achieve that when the user is already logged in, they should always go to the browse page, and if they're not logged in, then basically they should be prompted to go to the login screen, right? So for that, what we will do is we will import the, let me close this. Wait. All right. Yeah. So let's also import the uh, user object from the auth, and here what we will do is, let me zoom this a bit for you guys. We'll write a use effect over here, and we will check uh, if user is there, right? We navigate to the profiles page, whatever is the default page, we will go to that. And if we right, and here if you notice, we were logged in right now, but it wasn't working properly earlier. Now let's sign out and let's try and log in again. And now wait a second. All right, one more thing. Let's go to app.tsx. Let's empty the cache and let's do a hard reload. So it is showing us the login page. We are here. Let's sign out from here. Okay, and let's try and log in. Test 1, 2, 3. Okay, give me a sec. Did I make some changes here? So we have signed out, and then here we have the sign in functionality. Hang on a sec. What is this error? All right. I think there were some issues with the compilation. Let's try now. Test one, two, three. All right. Let's see. Okay, I remembered I forgot to add a piece of code. So over here, this should have been dependent on the user, right? So whenever we want the so now it should work properly. Now we are logging out. Just let me open this. Now we are logging out. Let's try and log in. Test one, two, three. And now you can see it is taking us to the profile page. Okay. So what we have done over here is that whenever there are any changes to the user object, and if the user is there, we will take the user to the profiles page whenever the user comes into the login page, right? So right now the user is logged in. Suppose we are on browse, right? And by mistake we go to login. Even then, it will always redirect us back to this page. Okay. So that is what we have done over here right now. And let's also make let's also fix a few more issues that we were having related to the profile. So what I will do is I will clear the local storage, right? So let me just clear this, and let's do a refresh, and let's try and add a user over here. But if you notice in the local storage, it's not updating this value over here. To fix this issue, we will come to the profiles context, and over here, instead of saving the user profiles, we will save the state. All right. And if we do a refresh right now, we can see that this object is here, and we also have the profile saved over here. Earlier it was showing it to us as null. So there was a slight issue which had occurred the last time when we were working on this. And let's try and log out from this account. Okay, let me just do a refresh. So the video is not resizing because it sets the screen width according to whatever is the size of the window, right? And we also see that since there's only a single user, we are still seeing this underline. Let's fix this as well. So we'll go to the profile menus, and this is where we had added this logic that only when the length is greater than 1, in that case the voice is cracking. Okay, give me a second. Is it better now? Or is it still cracking? You can let me know in the comments if it's still cracking or the cracking is gone. You can hear me, right? All right, I'm assuming that it's not cracking anymore. Okay, maybe there is some delay, I guess. Anyways, let's get started again. Okay, so we were looking into this issue, right? This line is coming even though we do not have multiple profiles available. So for that, the only problem was that we are missing a bracket over here. Let's save this, and the logic was such that only when the length of the profile is greater than 1, we show the border and the margin, right? Otherwise we don't. So now you can see that since we only have a single profile available for this account, it's no longer showing us that. And let's log out. Okay, let's log in with this user, test123. Was it this user or some other user? Let's see. Uh, okay, I think it was this one. Yeah, test123. Let's log in. And right now, since we had cleared the local storage, there were no users for this. Let's add a profile. Okay, let's get rid of the breakpoints. So this user has been added. Let's go to the applications tab. Let me zoom this for you guys, and you can see that for this user the profile has been added. Let's add another one, some other user, and they're being added to the correct email ID. Okay, let's go to this and let's sign out. Now let's sign back again with this user. Okay, so we are seeing all the profiles correctly as well. Let's add this over here, and let's add another one, Jane Doe, for example. So all of these are working properly also. Okay, fine. So this part is done as well. Let's make some changes to the login screen now. We'll also build the sign up page right now. So here what we want to do is let's add a class here, and instead of having this style over here, we will move these class this class over here, right? So that everything is great, but there are certain elements for which we want to have the text color as white, so we'll just give those text white. And since we are creating a sign up page now, let's move this inside a link. So we'll use the link tag from React Router DOM, and we will move this text inside the link, and let's give this a path slash sign up. Okay, all right, and let's make this white as well. Okay, let's also give a placeholder over here. Enter username, enter password, and let's add text white for the login button as well. And let's get rid of this min height, and let's make this as 350. So this is looking much neater compared to before. Okay. Now we'll copy all of this. We'll use this as a template for the sign up page. Let's create a page, signup.tsx, or rather, let's call this as registration.tsx. Let's paste this code over here, and let's call this component as registration. Okay. Netflix logo. Okay. I don't know, for some reason it was showing an error over there. Let's figure this one out in just a bit. And here, instead of sign up, we will say over here already have an account, sign in now. And here we will go to the login route. Actually, this, yeah. And here let's call this as register user. We will get the email and password, and here we will get the sign up function. Let's get rid of this use effect, and here we'll say sign up, and we want to navigate to the login screen once this process is done. And here we'll say register user. Okay, and let's try and add this to the routes. So apart from the login, now we have the register. Wait a sec. So we'll call this as slash sign up. Alright, why is it not able to find this? It's here. Registration. Just give me a second. Let me organize the imports. Import registration from dot slash pages slash registration. Okay, just give me a sec. Let me just restart my VS Code. Maybe there is some issue with it. Let me close this. And okay, this has opened again. Registration. All right. Okay. and we need to run the uh, development server again. So we'll say pnpm dev. All right. Okay, so this is working now. Fine. Let's test out the sign up page once. So we have all of this, and when we click on sign up, we are seeing this, and here also we need to update the text over here. It needs to say sign up. Okay. Let's go to temp mail. We already have this. Let's pick another user. Okay, let's delete this one. All right, let's copy this and let's try and see if we're able to register with this new user. So test 1, 2, 3. All right, I also need to update the text over here. Instead of sign in, let's call this as sign up. All right, so even with this user, we were able to successfully register. New user. All right. So the sign up functionality is working as well. And if you already have an account, we can say sign in. So this part is working also. Another thing that we'll do right now is we'll create a proper loader. So for that, let's create a component loader.tsx. Actually, it's not a page, it's a component. So it should be added here, loader.tsx. All right. Let's go to the Tailwind website and let's search for the animation section. And we have this example over here, right? Of this spinner. Let's inspect this and let's just copy the element. Let's come over here. Let's create a wrapper and paste the SVG that we got. Let's change this to class name and let's give some styling here. So this would be absolutely positioned. Let's give it a grid and the size is screen size and the width is also the size of the screen. And let's just say place items center. And here, instead of using text white, let's use the red color from Netflix. So Netflix text, Netflix red. And let's give this a height which is 1/5 of the screen size and width which is also 1/5 of the screen size. All right, and here let's come back to app.tsx. And instead of this, what we will do is We don't need this statement here. When it's loading, we will show the loader component. Let's do a refresh. Let's just see if it's working out correctly. I'll just comment this out and add the loader here just to see that if it's looking fine. So this is what the loader will look like whenever we are trying to load the page. Okay, so it's looking good. And while we're at it, let's also create a error route error component. This will basically just return an article which has a heading. This the page you're looking for doesn't exist, and let's say browse more content. Let's use the link tag here, and let's give the path to /browse. All right, and here we have the option of giving an error element. So whenever there's an error, right? So for example, let's try and log in over here. And we're clicking on this link, right, which does not have any error. Sorry, which does not have any route associated with it. So instead of showing this message, we'll show our own component, which will show the message that we would like to show. So error element equals route error, and we will show this component now. So you can see it is showing us this message. Let's style this a bit. So we'll give this grid and we'll say place content in the center, and let's give a gap of 2 and a padding of 4. So it is showing up now in the center. Let's give this text 4XL size, and let's make this text 2XL, something like this. And for this one, let's give it text Netflix red. And when we click on this, so it will take us to the browse page. All right, and okay, there is still some issue with the sound. I don't know what's the thing which is happening, but it was fine till before. Is it better now? All right, fine. Great. So that is so whenever we click on any route which does not have anything associated with it, whenever there's an error, so it will show us this page, and when we click on here, it will redirect us to this screen. Okay. All right. And let's make another change since we have now created the loading screen. Let's go to the banner component, and here instead of showing null we will show the loader. And let's try and increase the time duration for this to 1000 milliseconds. Okay, so now if we do a refresh, we can see the loader for some time. Once the content has been loaded, we can see that the loader goes away and we start seeing the information. All right, so all of those changes are there, and let's do one more thing. Let's fix this text also. So we will go to the, we have these two buttons over here. We just want them to appear, we want the text to appear in the center of the buttons, right? So we will say justify center here, and the same thing we will do for this button as well. Justify center, and now the text is in the center of the screen. Okay, all right, so all of the changes that we wanted to build and all the functionality that we wanted to add has been added to the Netflix clone. Now let's try and see if we're able to build it and deploy the application. Okay, so for deployment, let's come here. Let's open another window. Let me zoom this for you guys. All right, and here we will say npm or npm or yarn, whatever you're using. Build. All right, so it will try and compile everything, transpile the TypeScript files into JS files and put them in a dist folder, right? We can see it over here. So it created a dist folder and it has the entry point index.html and all the assets and all of the assets that we need. We don't really need the wheat logo, we're not using it anywhere, so let's get rid of this. I think it's sitting there in the public folder, so let's delete it from here. All right, so this is our deployment folder. Now let's go to Netlify. Let's log in. Okay, let's add a new site. Let's go from, so we have different options available. So let's just use deploy manually. You can also use, if we do import an existing project, we can give the path for our GitHub. Okay, so that is one option, but right now I have not really set up any repository on GitHub. So what we will do is we will choose the manual deployment option, but when you guys are working, you can select the import existing project option and give the path of your GitHub repository. So let's select deploy manually for now. And what we will do is let's open this folder. Let me minimize this. And what I will do is just drag and drop this here. So it is deploying the thing. Let's go to the site settings. Let's change the site name to Netflix clone DN3 for Devsnest batch number 3. Let's save this. All right, so we have modified the name of our site and we are using some environment variables. Okay, so is this opt into new experience? Fine. Let's add a variable. So let's go to VS Code. Okay, not this project. One sec. I think I accidentally closed it. Let me open it again. All right. Um, and here we have the env file, right? And another thing, just to make sure that the deployment is working correctly, right? The build folder which we generated, we can also do npm preview. So it will generate a local link, and let's click on this so we can see that our website is working with even with the build. And let's add the environment variables. So we need this, and this is the value. Copy this, paste this here. Let's save this. Then the next one is base API. Let's click on add variable. Value is this. Let's paste this here. And this is the next key. Value is this. And let's paste this here. So all of the variables that we had in the environment config, they are available. Now let's open this app. So you can see that our app has been deployed and it's been opened. So I had tried the deployment earlier as well. So that is why it is showing me this, because I had tested it with the local storage. Okay, let's do one thing. Let's save this. Let's sign out. Okay, so this is what we have. We're on the login screen. Okay, and we will select this user, say test123, sign in, and it's taking us to the profile page. This user we had added, and we can see that our website is working, right? So all of the features are working. Okay, so we have seen how to deploy the website. We have added all the functionality, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the clones which you guys are going to create. And I hope that you add more functionality to this, right? And especially for these two screens, build on the menus available over here. Transfer profile, account, work on the notification part, work on the search functionality, all of the things. I'm looking forward to seeing your clones. Do tag me and do tag Devsnest. Mention us in your social media profiles where you share them. The information is available in the description of this video. Okay. All right. Is the voice still breaking? Or is it audible? All right. Fine. Just confirming because there was a comment about voice breaking. Fine. So the things that we wanted to achieve with the Netflix clone, it is done. Now let's move on to the next part, which is related to the unit testing. All right, so let me close this and okay, let me commit these changes. Git add everything and git commit changes related to login and sign up. Not sing up, sign up. Okay, fine. I'll be uploading this repository on the Devsnest under the Devsnest organization in GitHub. So once it's done, I'll share the link with you guys on Discord. Okay. All right. So let's close this. And I have another project with me already set up. So this project was created using Create React app. Let's start this. We'll say pnpm start. So this is the default screen which you see, right? Whenever you set up a project using Create React app. So the reason why we chose this particular uh, for learning about unit testing, the reason why we chose Create React app is because it has built-in functionality and all the packages needed for unit testing. So these are the libraries that we use. So there is a library known as testing library, and we're using the React version of it. I have shared the resources in the take home assignment associated with this session. You will find it in the Devsnest website. And these are a few other things which are associated with testing, right? And in order to run the tests, we have this command known as test. So let's take a look at how we can write tests. So in the default project, right, we already have this file app.test.js, and it's using two functions from React testing library, which is testing library slash React, which is render and screen. So we use the render function to render a component that we want to render. And if we take a look at the screen right now, okay, we have this link, right, learn React, and we want to get some text from the screen. So we just say screen dot get by text. So we are trying to get the element by the text, the value of the text. So we are getting the element which has the text learn React, and we're using a regular expression over here. You can also pass a string, and this text is case insensitive. And then what we're expecting that whenever the app page is rendered, we are getting this element which has this text learn React, and we are expecting that whenever this app component is rendered, we should see the text learn React, right? So let's see if the default test case which has been added, let's see how to run it. So in order to run it, we will just say npm test, or you can say npm run test if you're using npm. Okay, so let me execute this command, and let's say I want to run all the tests. I will press A. So you can see that it ran this file app.test.js, and the reason why it ran this file is because the setup has been done such that it looks for all the files which has the dot test extension, dot test.js extension, or what you can do is you can create a folder underscore tests underscore, and you can add all of the files that you want to all be covered under tests in this folder. Okay, so suppose what I do is I move this file here, and instead of saying test.js, since I've moved it now inside the test folder, I can just call it app.js now. Okay, let's save this. And now you can see that even now the tests are working fine. All right. So the reason was that we have moved this under the test directory. So in order for the test runner, so there is something known as a test runner. And in this case, we're using jest, which is basically used for executing our tests. And this React testing library uses the jest library under the hood to execute the test cases, and it gives us certain functionality to test our components. Now, why do we do testing in the first place, like something like unit testing? So it is basically to ensure that whatever functionality we have implemented, we are covering certain use cases. So here there was a use case that whenever we are on the app screen, we should see this text, learn React, right? Because we are trying to do things which the user would do, and we should get the desired result. That is what we're trying to basically test. And we have different functions available which allows us to test different use cases and ensure that we're getting the expected result. Okay, so that is what we're trying to do over here, and that is what this library allows us to do. All right, and this also helps us, like suppose I go to this app and I make a change over here, learn React JS, for example. Now, if we try and run this, test again, and let's say I have this dollar, and now we were expecting the text to be just learn React, right? But we made a change over here. We changed it to learn React JS. So this test case started to fail because we modified, what if you made some, updates to your website? So we want to ensure that the user is seeing those updates. So our test case basically caught the and we also want to update our test case in such cases, right? So our test case started to fail. Now if we add this React.js line over here, wait a sec, it should be dollar, right? So hang on a sec, suppose I change this to React, and now you can see it is failing once again. And if in that case I also need to modify my test case, right? So this is where test cases are useful, that whenever you're making any modifications, we want to ensure that the new changes are caught by the existing test cases. Whatever was working before, it should if we have made changes to it and it is different than what it was, it should be caught. And if we have made changes to other parts of the page, so for example, suppose we come over here and we add uh, we added some more some more text here, right? But we have not made any changes to this part, so the existing test cases should work as it is, which they are, even though we have made the modifications. Okay, and that is what we see over here. Okay, just give me a sec. Still some of you are complaining about the voice break. Let me try something. Okay, is it still breaking now, or there is any change? Let me know if there is any improvement. Not sure what is going on. All right, so I think it should be better now. Let's see, because I had tested it out last time as well. Not sure what is going on. uh, Anyways, okay. So let's look at some of the basics. So the most fundamental thing that we can do is, suppose we have this file, okay, sum.js, and here we have a function add, which has these two numbers, first num comma second num, and it just does return first num plus second num, something like this. And we want to test this functionality. So what we will do is we will write sum.js. So like I said, we have two options available. Either we put this inside the test folder, or we can give it the extension like this, sum.test.js. And then we can say that okay, yeah, and we can say over here that we want to test this. So for that purpose, we will just come over here and say describe. So this is another block which is coming from uh, the React testing library. This is coming as part of the uh, what do you say? This is coming from the library known as jest. So we describe a certain scenario, and we are going to say uh, sums returns the sum of two numbers, and then we have different test cases over here, right? So this is going to uh, so here we give a description, and this is a callback function. This function gets executed whenever this test suite is being run. So this is a test suite, and then when we write test, this is a test case, and we are going to say uh, sum of 1 plus 2 equals 3. And then here what we will do is we will just say expect. So this is coming from jest. This is a function provided by jest. Okay, so over here we have the documentation for that, jest.js docs, and this is the getting started. So here we have this example, right? So let's just say that we are going to say expect some. Let's do one thing, let's export this function, and here we will say some import sum from dot slash sum. Okay, and then here we will say sum of 1 comma 2 2. So there are different functions available to us. So this is what we are expecting, right? When we execute this function, this is the this is something that which will get executed, and this is what we expect the result of it to be, right? So we'll say 2 equal 3. Okay, and let's see if this is running. It is saying sum is not a function, export function, add. What's wrong? Sum is not a function. Some export function. Oh wait, it's not called sum, it's called add. So we should say add over here. All right. And now you can see that it is, it executed that test case in this file, and it's giving us that it passed successfully. Now suppose I have another test case, say sum of 1 plus 5 equals 6, and I do not change these values, right? And suppose I make this as 6, for example, and here you can see that 1 plus 6, it should be equal to 7, but instead we are saying that it should equal 3. So that is why now this test case has failed, and here it's giving us where it failed exactly, right? So this is a test suite. You can have multiple of these. So you can have another describe block over here. So say suppose invalid result, and suppose we do something like test add sum of not a number plus 1, for example. So we should say over here expect add nan comma 1 to be not a number. Okay, and let's just fix this one. So 1 plus 5 equals 6, and you can see that it executed two test suites, which is this one and this one, and 4 test cases have passed, 1 2 3, and this was the other one over here, right? So this was these are the different test cases, and these are the test suites. So whenever we write something inside the describe block, that is known as a test suite, and then this is a test case, right? So you give a description as to what you're trying to test, and you give what is the uh, expected result, right? And sorry, what is the expected result and what is the actual result, right? And you compare those two using the expect function. Now let's take a look at how we can test something in React. So we already saw that there's a test suite test case written for testing the app component. Now let's create a simple counter component, say counter.jsx, and what we will do is this is going to return a section, and this has two buttons, right? So one is for increasing the count, and the other one is for reducing the count. And in between of these, let's create a variable. So use state snippet count, set count. Let's set the initial value to 0 and use the count variable here. And let's create a class called container. Let's go to index.css container display flex, and let's give a gap of 16 pixels. And we also need to add this component. So here let's add the counter component. Use state is not defined. I forgot to import this. So we see this counter component, right? And what we want to do is when we click on this, on click, let's create a function increment count. We'll say set count. Whatever was the previous count, we will basically add one to it. And similarly, let's create a function decrement count. Whatever was the previous value, we'll subtract one from it. Here we will say increment count, and here we will say decrement count. All right, let's see if this is working. I'm clicking on plus, the count is increasing. I'm clicking on minus and the count is reducing, right? So let's see how we can test all of this. So here let's go inside the underscore test folder. Let's create a file known as counter.js. Okay. Let's create a test case. Updates count by 1 when plus button is clicked. Okay. And before that, let's create another test case. Shows the count as 0 on initial mount, for example, right? So the first time this counter component is loaded, it should show the count as 0. So let's create a function render component. And what we will do is you will say return render. So this render function is coming from this library, and we will say slash, sorry, counter slash. Okay. Let's move this inside the describe block, testing the counter functionality. And we'll move these test cases inside this. And there's something known as before each, right? So this function gets called before each test case is executed. So what we want to do is before each test case is being executed, we want to call the render component function. All right. And so what, let's do one thing. This gives us a variable known as unmount. Whenever we call the render component function, so this is basically rendering this component and mounting it right to the React DOM tree, adding it to the virtual DOM and mounting that component. And after each test case has been run, so there's another function known as after each. Let's see what we will do. So here what we want to do is after each component has been run, each test case has been run, we want to unmount that component, right? So for that purpose, what we will do is we will say unmount. So we will destructure this property from this function, right? This function gives us an object and one of the properties is unmount. And here we will call unmount function, which will unmount this component after a test case has been run. All right. because for each test case we want the component to appear as if it has been newly rendered, right? So we want to test the uh, component such that it is being, as how the user would interact with it. Okay, so what we will do over here is that we will say so on the initial amount we will basically say screen dot get. So the screen is also coming from this library, so we will import screen from here. Screen dot get by text. So we are expecting the text to be 0 basically. All right, and let's take this in a variable const initial count, and we will await this. And since we're using await, we have to make this a asynchronous function. And here we will say expect initial count to be 0. Okay, let's see if this test case is running. So it failed basically. And what is it saying? So we're rendering this, and why did it not work? Let's see, just give me a sec. Counter unmount blah 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 get by text. So it is showing over here we have this section and we have 0. Expected 0 and it received this basically. So it is saying that when we said screen dot get by text, instead of actually we wanted to use a different function, it should have been find by text, right? Instead we said get by text, and what is it giving us now? It's returning us the entire section element. Okay, just a sec. What did I do different? We have the counter and here we have the count. Let's do one thing. Let's put this inside a span. This is odd. Okay, actually, uh, since we are trying to, this is going to give us an HTML element and it's trying to give us the entire element. So instead of saying to be 0, we should say we should expect the initial count to be in the document, right? So let's try and save this. And now we can see that it successfully executed this, right? Suppose I change this to 1, right? And we do not expect the count to be 1. So in this case, you can see that the test case is failing. So the logic that we have written, that is correct, that when the component is rendered for the first time, the initial count should be 0, right? So now when I change this back to 0, this test case is giving working correctly. Okay. Now what we want to do is, let's try and click the add button. That is something the user would do, right? When we click on this, the count should increase by 1. So for that, what we will do is we'll say const add button equals screen dot get by role, or rather find by role. And here we will say the role is button. Okay, this should be const, and let's give this button a name also, so that we're uniquely able to identify the two buttons. So name equals add, and name equals sub, for example. And here we can pass an optional property. So there are lots of what do you say, different functions available. You can go through the documentation on this website, React testing library. I've also shared the link in the resources, and you can go through the different uh, you can go through this documentation, and you can go to the API, and you have different functions available over here, and what to do, what is render, and all of the things, what is mount, unmount, and these kind of things, right? So you can go through this website. I won't be able to cover everything, but I wanted to give you guys an idea. Okay, so the name is say add, and it's going to take some time to find this, button on the screen. Let's make this async. Then the next thing that we want to do is we want to say we have another library available known as user event. So this is used to basically mock the or what do you say, give the impression that the user is trying to click, or the user is try to perform the actions of the user. We can make use of this library user event, and then we can do something like user event dot click, and we give the element that we want to click, which is the add button, and we await this. Then what we want is, you'll say const update equals screen dot find by text, and we expect now that the initial count was 0, and now it should be 1 basically. Okay, and then we will say expect updated to be in the document. All right, let's save this, and let's see if this test case is working. So even now it is failing. Now what is it telling us? It's telling us that it is unable to find the button with the name add. Okay, so um, so there are different, this was one of the ways. It's not able to find the button right with this. So here also we can just say find by text, right? And instead of using button, we can just say that it will find it by the text plus. And now you can see that it found the button with the, you know, plus text. Then we basically click that button, and then we expected that the value of count should increase by 1, right? So initially it was 0. So before we do the click, what we can do is we can do something like expect uh, the count to be 0, right? This is before the click. So here we can say 0, right? And then we're clicking on the plus button, and then we should expect that the count should be 1, right? Suppose I were to change this to 1, it should throw us a error, right? So the test case failed because it was not able to find any element which had the text 1. So initially the count is 0, and then when we click on the add button, it increases by 1. And similarly, we can have another test case updates the count by, or instead of updates you can say subtracts count by 1 when minus button is clicked, and then we find this button and we expect the text to be -1. So initially it is 0, then we reduce 1, and then basically it is telling us that this is working as well. So all of the test cases are passing now. Now let's take a look at how we can you know let's create a component which is dependent on some other services which are external to that component. Let's see how do we test such a component. Suppose we have a component which is login dot jsx, then react functional component login, and let's do one thing. Let's create a form over here. Let's leave this as blank and then say on submit. Let's create a function over here. Handle submit, and we will say handle submit, and this basically has a input field which is text. So we'll accept a username. ID is also username, and this is going to be of type password. And let's call this as password. All right, and then we have a button over here for login, and let's create a dummy service api.js. It has a function over here which is used for signing up. So I'll say export sign up. It accepts a username and it accepts a password, and this is a function. So here what we will do is we will basically just return a promise, and we will just use this promise to simulate a API call. So promise, and this is going to say so this is going to get a callback with these two functions, resolve and reject. And basically what we will check is if username equals say test at gmail.com. We're just testing whether the username and password is matching this, and password equals test, for example. In that case, we will just resolve it with whatever is the username and the password. Else we will reject and we will say invalid username or password. All right. So this is what we have created to simulate, the login functionality. And then here we will just say we will get the event object over here, and const we will get the username and password from here. So form data equals new form data, and we will pass it event dot target, and then we will say sign up. Actually, we wanted to call this as sign in. Let's go inside this file. Okay, and we will pass it the form data dot get. So this is the name, which is username, and then we also want to pass it the password, which is form data dot get password. And this is an asynchronous function, right? We want to wait for the result. If we are getting a user, we want to display a message over here. So let's take this in a variable. So const user equals this. And actually, let's not resolve the password here. And let's use a state variable over here. So use state logged in, set logged in, and initially we'll set this to false. And here we'll say if there is a user, then we'll say set logged into true. And let's move all of this inside a fragment. And here we will say that if the user is logged in, then we want to display this text user is logged in. And let's create another variable over here, error set error, and initially it is null. And what we will do is we will move all of this inside a try catch block. Catch error, and if there is any error, we will set the error inside this error state. Okay. And similarly, here we will say if there is any error, we will basically show the error text here. Let's style this color. Let's give it the color red, or let's say tomato. Okay, let's try and run this, and let's add the component inside our app. Login, and Here we will say event dot prevent default to prevent the reload from happening. And let's import the use state hook. All right. So suppose I just hit login, right? So it is telling me invalid username or password. And if I just enter something like this, it is showing me this text. Another thing that we want to do is we want to say set error to empty and logged in to false. All right. And now what we want to do is what did we give over here exactly? Inside the API. So this was what we had used, right? Suppose we give test at Gmail and test as the password. Now we click on login. Should have shown us that message. One sec. Login, and it is saying user is logged in, right? So whenever we click on login, it is, and the username and password is correct, it will show us this, right? And one more thing we will do here, that instead of directly resolving, we'll use a timeout to simulate a API call. So a timeout of say 300 milliseconds, and then after 300 milliseconds we should see the text. Now we say login. Suppose I give an incorrect password, so it is saying invalid username or password, but it is still showing us this text. So let's come back here. Before we log in, right, we will say set error to empty, or rather null, and logged in to false. Now when we click on login, why is it not showing us the error? All right, so we give some random text here, and still you can see it is giving us that. And if there is an error, we can just say set logged in to false if the user was logged in earlier, right? So it's giving us invalid username and or password. All right, so this is what this is. Now let's try and test this component, and we'll also see how to test this particular thing, because this is an external component. This is an external functionality with respect to this component, right? And we are trying to do unit testing, so we are trying to test this in isolation. So things which are external to this, we will try and mock those. Okay, so we only want to test the things that which are in the login component. All right, so for that, what we will do is, let's come over here. Let's create a file known as login.js, and let's create a function over here. Describe should display error, right? And we'll have all these scenarios where it should display the error. And let's create a function over here, function render component. return render, and it should render the login component. And let's create two variables. Let container and unmount, and then we'll say before each test case we want to get these two values, and we want to we want these values to be initialized, and we will call the render component function, and let's destructure these values. So this is another syntax for destructuring for already declared variables. All right, and after each we want to unmount the component which we created, and here we will basically test that shows what is the message that we have from here. Yeah, invalid username and password for incorrect username. So here what we will do is we will get the username, right, element. So in order to get that we will say container, right? So this is giving us access to the where is it, login. Yeah, it is giving us access to the elements of this, right, component. And on the container we can use selector, JavaScript selector queries, right? So you can do container dot query selector. We can do DOM manipulation basically. Instead of using all of those screen methods, this is another way by which you can get elements of a component, and then we can do get the element which has the ID username, right? Because we gave it the ID username, right? So we're getting that element, and here we will basically say await, and here we will say async and const um, password equals await container dot query selector password, and then we want to find the login button, right? So we'll say await screen dot find by. So we need to import screen from this library, and else we will say find by text, and the text that we have is login, right? So let's copy this and go inside the test file login. Then we will import the user event library, and then we will say user event dot click login, and we expect that the container has an element. I mean, actually we can basically just say screen dot find by text, and we should have this element, right, invalid username or password. So we should see this text whenever the user clicks on the login button. Now to enter the values for inside the text boxes, what we can do is we can once again make use of this user event dot user event library, and we can make use of the type function, and we give the element in which we want to type. So we want to type inside the username, and this is the value that we want to type. So say test, and for the password also we want to type test, and we'll say await over here and await over here, because it will try and simulate the typing behavior of the user. All right, and it's giving us an error. Wait, what is it? So this should have been password. Password dot type is not a function. Let's see, did I make any mistake over here? Password. Mhm. Input type password, name password, ID password. Okay, sorry. User event dot type password. And now you can see that even that test case has passed, because we uh, it will only work when it is test@gmail.com. For any other values, it will give us that error. Similarly, let's create another test case, and here it says it will show the same text, but this time for you know empty username and password. Okay, so this time we do not type anything, we leave it as it is, so we don't even need these. And even in this case it should show us the error message, so even this test case has passed. Now let's create another test suite, and this time this is for should display user logged in, right? Message. So in this case we give the uh, shows logged in, and here we will basically type test@gmail.com. Let's get rid of this and save this. And this test case has failed. And actually we wanted to have this text, right, for the login. So user is logged in, that is what is the message that we should see when we are giving the correct credentials. And now you can see that this test case is passing as well, right? So this is trying to simulate the same behavior as the user would interact with your app. There would be a username and password field. The user would type the username and password, click on the login button, and once the user clicks on login, they should see the message, user is logged in, right? So we were able to even do that. Now the thing is, it is actually making a call to the API, right? And if this were URL, and this is something that which we do not want while unit testing, because we are trying to test this component in isolation. So for that purpose, what we will do is we will mock that particular API. So in order to do that, what we will do is we will say we'll use a specific function provided by the jest library. So that is jest.mock /API, because that is the path we want this entire file to be mocked. And we will say basically this is going to return an object. We'll say underscore es module. We'll set that to true. And then we have this function, right? Sign in, and we will say jest dot function. So we are just returning a mock function. It is basically giving us a mock instance, right? And then here we will say import sign in from dot slash API. Okay, and over here we will say sign in dot mock rejected value, and we will return the text over here, say invalid username or password. So this way what is happening is that the actual call isn't happening, right? We This is a external dependency to this component. We are not interested in testing this, so we are mocking its response. Now since this was returning a promise, so we are saying mock rejected value, because this will go in the reject block, right? And then this is what we are rejecting this with, and the same thing we'll be doing here also. And let's see if it is still passing. So the other test cases are passing, but the thing which is failing is this one. So here we will say sign in dot mock resolved value, and here we will resolve it with this username test at gmail.com, for example. All right, it is giving us some error for this. So it should be dot slash API. All right. So now what we have done is the actual sign in call is not happening. Instead, we gave a mock function, which is basically a dummy function. Instead of that being called, a jest function is being called. And that jest function has these special functions on it, like mock rejected value and mock uh, resolved value, right? And it will basically simulate a promise, and this will you know allow us to test different scenarios. So even when you have some external library, right? So in the previous when we were working on the Netflix clone, right? So we were using the fire base auth service, and it had different functions, okay, like sign in with username and password, right? So these were the different functions. So to test such scenarios, What we can do is we can mock that entire service and then give a mock function call over there. All right. So this is how you can do that. And suppose we wanted to unit test this API itself. So let's create a file over here, api.test.js. You can use either one of the convention. Either you can place it inside the test folder or you can give it this suffix. Okay. And then here what we can do is import sign in from API, and then we will just say test the data. What do you say? The data is username test@gmail.com. Suppose this is something that we want to test when we give the correct credentials. So here we'll just say await, expect, sign in with test@gmail.com. So this is how you can basically test promises, right? Let's see if this is showing us this is passing as well. So you can see that this uh, test suite is passing also. Right. And similarly, when we give some invalid, the data is uh, the fetch fails with error, for example, reject, and then we can say to equal invalid username or password, right? So even this is working as well. So we were able to test. This is how you can test asynchronous behavior within your application. All right. So this is how you can test a component. You can also test hooks and other things as well. You guys can go through that on your own over here. So we can go to the what do you say? There are different examples over here, right? We have the render function, we have the act as well, say hooks. So we also have something known as the render hook. So suppose we have this hook, right? User logged in, it returns some value, and then you can basically test hooks as well. So lots of different functions are available. You can go through these on your own, and the purpose of explaining you this is that you can so that you become familiar with unit testing and testing components, how you can mock external features and all of that, because this is something that you might be doing when you work on industry level projects, or this is something which you might get asked to do in the coding assignment, that you're supposed to build a project and also write unit test cases. So I wanted you guys to be familiar with this, how you can do that. So I hope you enjoyed this session. I'll see you guys tomorrow with the final session of the front end bootcamp. Have a great day ahead, and this is it for this session. If you have any more doubts, we can meet in the Discord voice channel right now. So until then, take care and bye.